This time with James Milan.
First, Bu Dai Xi means cloth bag theater, which is
a traditional Taiwanese puppet form, a lifelong artistic journey, and a story still being brought to life in Arlington.
I was studying Mandarin in Taiwan, in Taipei, and I was
Margaret Moody and the living art of Bu Dai Xi.
Hi everybody and welcome, I'm James Milan. Today we are joined by an artist whose work connects tradition, performance, and community in a really special way. What started with time in Taiwan became a deep connection to Bu Dai Xi and a body of work that continues to bring stories like Journey to the West to life for audiences here in the US. So I'd like to welcome today Margaret Moody. Margaret,
thank you. Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I want to start, first of all, let me just make sure I said that correctly. Bu Dai Xi, is that the right way?
Bu Dai Xi.
Bu Dai Xi, okay.
Yeah.
I would love for us to start, we plan to talk to you today about your journey from the 80s in Taiwan all the way till today, and also the work that you did with a particular mentor and what you are currently up to. All of that is in front of us. But let's start by just asking you to talk us through the kind of the basics about Bu Dai Xi. And you have some friends along here.
First, Bu Dai Xi means cloth bag theater, which is a strange name. But if I were a Taiwanese puppeteer, when I was done with a show, I would take the costumes off because they're intricate and they're well ironed. And I want to protect the puppet's head. So I would take this beautiful old carved puppet and put him in his cloth bag. So that if I opened a trunk, it's cloth bag theater, because with that one trunk, I could perform hundreds of stories. Because there are a couple of character types, and then they can all change clothes. So this is an old man.
Bu Dai Xi is a traditional Taiwanese god puppet form, small in scale. It opens into a much larger world of character, transformation, and story.
And one of the things to know about Bu Dai Xi is that the head, whether it's wood or paper clay or an acrylic, and the feet weigh the same. And that means your hand can use that weight to do a lot of work.
Part of what makes Bu Dai Xi so expressive is the design. The puppet's balance allows the puppeteer's hand to create far more movement than the audience might expect. But not every role moves that way. Some characters demand restraint, elegance, and years of control.
The Monkey King, Sun Wukong, who's one of the famous puppets of China, one of the famous characters, has a little split here, so he's going to be great at running. This flipping just really works with him, and he can do all these little tricks and jump from hand to hand.
That is great, and he has. You were saying that there are different roles and types and characters that are just kind of.
Yeah, so the monkey is an animal, which is a type of clown, and that means that as a puppeteer, you want to move it well, but you're really free to do whatever you want. You can do a little itching, you can flop down, you can turn around and look. But with something like the Shaidan, the young woman character, you wouldn't have that freedom. But there's a real delicacy to these movements. And people who specialize in this character work for years. I'm doing a little bit with my hands to give the illusion that she has shoulders, and that's about as far as she's going to look. And I'm doing a little bit with my other hand to give her a delicate walk. But a person really trained in this puppet you're just going to think, what is in that puppet's costume? It's really amazing what they can do. So another kind of character are the wensheng. This is where musicians are a huge part of it. Before this guy comes on, there would probably be some horns announcing, there might be a scarf, sometimes gold and silver, saying, hey, here comes the king.
In Bu Dai Xi, each role carries its own physical language, and the movement does not stand alone. Music helps announce power, shape the rhythm, and define the scene. It is part of the storytelling itself.
You should really try one out. Put your pointer finger in the head.
Okay.
Morning, monkey. Afternoon.
Morning.
Yeah, see, there you
Hello.
go. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Let's see if you could. Why don't you sit down on this bun, monkey?
It's not easy for me to do.
You did it. You did it.
There we
yeah,
go.
Yeah. I think you did a great job, monkey. And I think your body helps you because your body really is the puppeteer's hand.
Yeah, and every part of it can get brought to bear
Exactly.
and needs to be.
Yep. Now let's see you stand up. You're gonna Yep. You're gonna look down at your feet. Make sure they're on the floor. Now, your back hurts a little bit. Let's see you get up. Oh,
There we go.
Good job.
Yay.
Very good job,
And
monkey.
now I'm going to retire.
Okay.
For Margaret Moody, Bu Dai Xi is more than a performance form. It is the tradition she encountered in Taiwan and the one that will shape the course of her life.
Wait until the emperor hears. His banquet ruined.
You know, I think it goes without saying that takes a long time for you to master, I would imagine.
I haven't mastered. I haven't. I'm probably like a third-year apprentice, and people there will study 10 years before they're really outperforming as the head of a troupe.
Wow.
And the movements are just incredible and fast and whew.
Well, you're a third-year apprentice, self-described, but that has taken quite a while just to
taken a while.
get there,
Yeah,
right?
it has,
Because
it has.
my understanding is that, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your journey to get to this point. My understanding is that this all started in the 1980s.
It did. I was studying Mandarin in Taiwan, in Taipei, and I was mentioning to a French friend that I had done some puppetry in my college, and I really loved it. And he said, "You didn't tell me you like puppets. You have to come see my teacher." And he took me to meet a man named Li Tianlu, who I think, I should be able to do the math, but he was already maybe in his 70s by then. He was very thin. His hands just seemed to have extra joints, and they really might have had extra joints, but he had also been moving them. His father had had a puppet troupe, so he had spent his life in this art. And what was interesting about him, because Taiwan had an apprentice system that ran in families. He learned from his father, he taught his sons. His sons had planned to teach their sons. But right at the moment that I was living in Taiwan was when it wasn't working.
My father passed down the art to us. In a sense, we are the last generation, even though we have many students now. I don't know whether any professional troupes will be formed in the end, but at least we can be assured that we have taught the craft and technique to the next generation. My outlook is different from other performers. They treat students lightly and train them in a slipshod way. I won't. If a student wants to learn, I will pass on everything I know to them.
The tradition Margaret was entering was larger than one teacher. It belonged to a family lineage and to an art form already beginning to change.
One of the main jobs you had as a puppeteer was going to a temple and presenting a really traditional story to bring luck to all the people who were about to be part of a temple feast. And it was a big deal. They would set up a stage, like make a stage that afternoon out of all kinds of things. The puppeteers would put up their stage. People would come out of houses with their own stools and watch. And it enriched the temple because so many people gave offerings. And it was, I'm sure it was never a wealthy life as a puppeteer, but you could do it, and you could have your sons, usually your daughters, were probably sewing things for you. And the temples were starting to realize that people wanted to see movies, and they kind of made drive-ins at these things. And it was, this was kind of taking Taiwan by storm, and the government at the time hadn't supported Taiwanese culture. It was supporting mainland, arts that were considered more mainland, that spoke Mandarin. So this was really a downtime. And my teacher, I think, was just kind of brilliant. He realized a Frenchman had come to visit him, not the friend
Not the one,
described, but his kind of our older brother in puppetry, and had loved the art. I think he'd heard about it before and wanted to learn. And he said, "How much should I pay you?" And my teacher just, I think, waited a day to respond. And he said, I don't want any money. Take this money. Keep it. I want you, you know, you're a foreigner. If you love this art and you're working on it, newspapers and magazines and TV, they're going to understand that this must be important. And you'll help me revive my art. And the strange thing is that it worked. It was one of many things puppeteers were doing to keep their art alive. But it was a really smart one. That is what media wanted to see, is these foreigners are here. Why are they looking at this art? So I was so lucky to be part of that.
That's interesting. Let me make sure I understand this. So you're saying that the kind of forces, macro forces, such as the incursion or the introduction of movies and television and things like that, were almost an existential threat to puppetry at that time. And that Master Lee, as one of the kind of more insightful folks in the field, so to speak, recognized that the interest of foreigners would be a way to kind of revive or sustain.
And actually to harness the power that he was against, you know, to get those news people and TV people to come look at him. And it really, really worked. He ended up making movies for quite a while.
Oh, that is very, very interesting, right? Basically, instead of, like, you don't give in to the enemy, you co-opt the enemy, so to speak.
As Master Lee began taking on students from around the world, Bu Dai Xi started to draw new attention from both the media and the government. Margaret was part of that moment. In the years that followed, they helped carry the tradition in the art form back to their own countries through touring, public performance, and documentary work, including a film that later aired nationwide on PBS. But for Margaret, this was never only a story about cultural exchange. It was also the slow, demanding work of becoming a student.
How long did you spend in Taiwan at that time? You said that you went back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I think I spent 2.5 years the first time I went. I just stayed.
And then it's been kind of constant trips back and forth since then? Or?
And not constant, but always in touch with this troupe. I sort of, you know, it's one of those relationships. Yeah.
When he took you on, was that something that was relatively common to do, that he would not only, you know, pass on these skills?
We would go to his house. We was usually me and my French friend, or later on another person came. Many years later, I went back with my friend Madeline, who I perform with as well. And the two of us would go in the morning. He'd be drinking tea. We would kind of help with the pouring of tea. And then we just went through these movements over and over and over. Or
yeah, there you go.
And I'm not an especially patient person, so I really felt that I had that down. I just had it. There was no reason to do that one again, and we should move on. And I would just be told to do it again and again and again.
I can imagine that the impact that he had on you, and certainly on your practice, is immeasurable. But I'm wondering if you can just kind of share any highlights, any things that are particularly memorable for you.
We were late for class. We didn't understand how important this was. We thought it was, in the beginning, I remember, you know, his son saying to me, this is not just fun things. This is not just fun things. You have to practice. But we didn't really think so, and we kind of yucked it up in the classes. And the Taiwanese apprentice, who's now a wonderful puppeteer, who was kind of coming up at the same time, working for Master Lee's son, was washing cars from 5 in the morning to 10 in the morning, and then coming and spending the entire day with his teacher.
Wow.
Where I was teaching a couple of hours of English in the afternoon and getting by. So it was a really different standard. It was a new thing to take on foreigners, though.
Yeah. I assume another kind of survival mechanism in a sense.
What stayed with her was more than technique. She brought back a new understanding of how movement, character, and performance all work together.
How has this worked in your life ever since? Have you been doing Bu Dai Xi ever since those years that you spent in Taiwan?
I have. Been doing Bu Dai
Have you,
Xi, yes.
have you been letting her monkey do that?
He's the star. I came back and I persuaded my friend Madeline to go back with me. We only spent 8 months there together, but I think she learned a lot, and we've continued to learn that. I think a couple things. One of the things that attracted me to Bu Dai Xi was that the stories were historical, and there was the Journey to the West bunch, all about the Monkey King and the monk on his way to get Buddhist scriptures. Then there were so those were the magical ones. There was a historical whole series from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, an old Chinese novel, really based on a history of, I'm not going to embarrass myself, but trying to say how many dynasties, but lots, warring kingdoms. And it was kind of, and when you went to a show, you would see all these old men and women on their stools, and there'd be younger people with their kids on their knees, and everybody was watching it. And I had this view that, wow, we can do that too. And we didn't really, Madeline and I didn't really find a way to do that. Here, puppetry is for kids, although there's, the Puppet Show Place Theater in Brookline works so hard to make that not true, but generally the people who book you are. So we ended up, as performers, doing episodes of Journey to the West in English, at that time with taped music. And I felt sometimes, very often, that we had to dumb it down because we were performing for kids. And people come in, they've really worked at getting an audience of all ages. And I think it's the grandmas telling the kids, shh, just a minute, the monkey's coming back. But I feel like we're able to bring a fuller sense of the historical, not Shakespeare, but that this is a story for all ages of people.
In the United States, that way of thinking continued to shape the story she chose to tell. Over time, it also shaped how she understood her role as a puppeteer working across cultures.
I am so glad to work with Jimmy Zhao because he's a terrific musician, but he also performed with different Chinese opera troupes, and this music is very connected. There's there's something called naochang where you make a whole lot of noise. It's called warming the stage, and I said that to him, and he knew exactly that we needed a whole lot of percussion and some erhu, and he understands that when the Jade Emperor comes on, it's very serious. So it's so great to have someone who understands that better than I do, and makes, the music often makes the scene.
I am the Jade Emperor, ruler of heaven and earth. I hear reports of a...
In Bu Dai Xi performance, music is not simply a background. It is part of the dramatic structure of the form. Traditionally, that musical world is divided into two parts, wenchang and wuchang. Wenchang carries melody, mood, and atmosphere through instruments like the flute and the erhu. Wuchang drives the action and rhythm through percussion including drums, gongs, cymbals, and wooden clappers.
尤其当他们出现状况，就演员在舞台上，他常常会有出现什么状况的时候，那最重要需要的就是我们能够在这里那么弥补的那么好，根本看不出来，就好像故意是这边是停了，然后就是音乐背景啊，有的时候就是你也知道，有的各种各样的这个角色出来不一样，我们就要用不一样的音乐形式，用不一样的乐器来表现。 那如果假如说没有这些配合，那就显得就单调了。
As Jimmy explains, that kind of performance depends on close coordination. Puppetry and music have to move together. The musician often works from the shape of the scene, responding to a character's entrance, personality, and rhythm in real time.
录音的话，我有点不自然，
对，
就是我。
而且
这么多话，我不能再讲音乐要快感触。
对，那个很麻烦的。所以我们这个最重要的就是让大家感觉到这种生命。
That also give the music expressive power. It does not just accompany the puppet; it helps give the performance a sense of energy, timing, and life. At the same time, this musical tradition is also becoming harder to sustain.
那这个乐器就是本来几乎都快失传了，做这个琴的师傅已经都不在世了，没有人做这个，因为卖不掉嘛。现在就是商业化，所以很可惜，就是在商业化之后呢，就有好多东西就失传了。
Many of the instruments and many of the techniques required to play them are losing the performance context that once kept them alive.
这个的大梨的这个特点就是它能模仿各种声音，动物叫啊，什么羊啊、鸡呀、马呀、牛啊，什么都行。以前我觉得特别好，但是我后来用了一段时间，我发现这个乐器主要的任务就是 copy， 就是模仿。模仿这算什么乐器呀？就没有意思了。那后来有人也和我说，我也这样觉得，就模仿本身就是它的特点，其他的乐器就模仿不出来。
Have you found as the years have gone on that is like that you've had to accommodate for anything, any
No, this
changes,
is
or
so
does
great
that
about
actually
this art.
keeping you? Yeah, it's keeping you very
if you're
young
an
that way.
athlete, you have to accommodate, but the puppets don't get old. It's just me, and your hands, I think, are one of the last things to go. I've been lucky so far, anyway.
Well, that's great to hear, because again, there's a youthful exuberance to some of what you're doing.
Which is another thing about being a puppeteer, is that if you're an actress or an actor, you have to be who you are. This is the body and the face you have, but I don't have to. I can be the Monkey King, I can be the Jade Emperor, monster, the lady, and I love that. And I think I recognized that early in puppetry, that this was going to, you get to expand your own emotional horizons.
That freedom is part of what has kept her in the art for so long. But carrying a tradition across cultures also means knowing the limits and understanding her place within it.
And I'm sure that you didn't kind of set out to be a cross-cultural ambassador.
I didn't.
In doing this, but that functionally you are performing that kind of role. How has that been for you? I appreciate the fact that you just said some of it felt like you were having to dumb it down because in the Western world, puppets are for kids, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, we know better.
Thank you.
At least I know better now from talking to you, and you've always known, you've known better for a long time.
It's a little uncomfortable to be a cross-cultural ambassador, and I think that I've kind of got certain lines that I've figured out, because it's a strange feeling to stand up and realize that there are Chinese American people in the audience, and they came because they want to see this art. But wait, so what I feel about it is that if you're interested in the Monkey King, I know a lot about the Monkey King, and I really love the Monkey King. I try to wait, I think that a lot of venues would like us to introduce Chinese New Year or a cultural holiday, and I can't do that. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with Christmas. So I really try to say exactly what I can do and what I can't.
For Margaret, that work is still evolving. It lives not only in reflection, but in performance, collaboration, and the audiences she continues to reach.
We have kind of covered Bu Dai Xi pretty well. What you do for your American audiences.
What I do. And I wanted to say one thing about Bu Dai Xi, which, in a sense, I think for me, it's like having a school uniform. Because if you're a puppeteer, you can elect to use strings, you can use marionettes, you can have a rod to do your puppet, you can invent something new, you can make a mechanism. And in the same way that you can open your closet as a middle schooler and decide to wear strange shorts with tights, or maybe not, maybe you'll wear that funny thing in your hair. And as a Bu Dai Xi puppeteer, I don't go there. I just say, I'm going to make puppets that move the way the Bu Dai Xi puppets make, and they flip, because they've got a little weight in their feet, and they aren't as finely tuned. I do have some fairies who are very kind of fine, but I just want to make, I love not having to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Right.
It took you long enough to get this good at
the wheel to
right?
Roll. I love having this movement style. So part of my life is continuing to do stories like that, and stories where there'll be Bu Dai Xi style puppets and then suddenly a big puppet that you can tell it's a different species because it's a different size. But I'd say for the next few years, this will also be a big part because I've got this great collaboration going with Jimmy Zhao and my friend Madeline.
All right.
Yeah. I do love to dig. Oh, Monsieur Badger, if you could dig these holes. But you have to tell me where exactly am I going to build this playground? So they make a playground design, and then the problem is, oh, Monsieur Badger, I will bring the swing set. No, not so fast, not so fast. Oh, Miss Dewdrop, we are going to need some cement. Cement? Keeps the poles in the holes. Monsieur Badger, we fairies, we do not use cement. It is too ugly. We use frog spit. Miss Dewdrop, did she say?
Let me ask you as a last question, how do people who might be interested through this interview, you know, how can they get in touch? How can they find out more?
The Puppet Showplace is a great place to see puppets, but I have a website, Margaret Moody Puppets. I also, for this particular art, I work through Galapagos Puppets, but Boston is a great city for people who love puppetry, so I'm definitely part of that stream. I've come to understand that there are, there are Chinese language schools where they, people want their children to brush up their Chinese or learn it from the beginning, and increasingly I spend time there, which is really, really fun. Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you on all that. I really had fun talking to you and talking to all of your friends.
Thank you.
And, we will look forward to sharing this with our own audience and encouraging them to get to, would you mention again the name of the place in Brookline? Or
the Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline.
There
it's
you
just a terrific place if you need more puppetry in your life.
All right, great. Puppet Showplace Theater.
Yeah.
Do not forget. I've been speaking with Margaret Moody, and again, you can find her at work, I'm sure, at the Puppet Place Theater and other places around in Boston, and you should.
There's one more place to mention. I'm
Absolutely.
a studio artist at Arlington Center for the Arts, and they just support artists everywhere, including me.
Hey,
yeah.
Arlington Center for the Arts is a great last
They're a great
plug.
place.
I have to say that.
Yes.
Okay. So for Margaret Moody, thanks so much for being here. I'm James Milan. Thank you guys for being here as well. And we'll see you another time.
Thanks.
That was terrific. You think so? Yeah.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.